and gather more information about preparedness efforts that the city is taking and individual efforts in which you can engage. We all must assume personal responsibility for our families, and then, through the faith-based communities, work to help our neighbors until outside aid can arrive. We all need to be informed by the facts about what is likely to happen and how to prepare. We can learn from the experience of others such as Houston, New Orleans, Puerto Rico, Mexico City, Central and Southern California. And for those that remember even our own spring break quake and the Columbus Day storm, learn more about what is needed, what has worked, and what has not. Again, I thank you all for attending. I thank you, the Newberg Christian, for opening up to a greater Newberg community, and I am hopeful that this preparedness fair will energize other efforts in Newberg and will become an annual event. Thank you all for being here. And with that, I would like to introduce our County Commissioner, Mary Sterrett. Mary, come on up. Welcome to our fair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank Newberg Christian Church. Christy Cook first got a hold of me and said, "You've got to hear this guy that does this Prepare Out Loud presentation. It's absolutely amazing." And because she was so on fire about it, she and a number of other people worked to make sure that this was going to be presented and here. I want to thank our CERT. We are really blessed in Yamhill County with our Yamhill County CERT. When you have a problem and something happens, who do you call? You call the helpers, and they really are. Whenever there's any kind of an event, they're prepared, and they prepare on a regular basis. Yamhill County's emergency manager is Brian Young. You're going to be hearing from him later on. He'll give you an idea of what the county is doing. There's so much preparation that goes on to make sure that the county is prepared. But I have to say something special about Newberg. Newberg has put together kind of what you might call the holy grail of, or the holy grid of churches, because churches are centrally located, and that's a really good place. They've been very proactive. That's a really good place to get preparation in place, because they're centrally located and they have the facilities in case there is an event. But I just want to ask before we go on to Steve, real quickly, what's in your wallet? Because right now, what is in your wallet, if there was an event, is going to be what's in your wallet perhaps for months to come. And plastic might not be the answer. Do you have cash? What's in your gas tank? Because as you might hear from our emergency manager later on, when the fuel supplies are shut off and there is no way for us to get fuel, what you have in your tank might be it for a good long time. And what do you have in your house? Do you have enough to eat for a number of weeks or even longer? What do you have to drink? All of these different things, medications. So these are all things you're going to be hearing about tonight, and it's really important for us to take it seriously. We're seeing an uptick, it appears, in quake activity along the West Coast, and I'm no expert, but whenever I see one of those, I start thinking, are we going to be next? So thank you all for being here, for caring enough about your families and your communities. And now we'll have to, this is a gentleman who's got a presentation that will really wow you. He's Steve Elberlein from the Red Cross for Prepare Out Loud. Here's Steve.
Thank you. That was such a nice introduction. It makes me wish that I had actually taken time to prepare a presentation tonight. This is gonna be long. Hey, y'all, thank you for coming out. The only way that we're able to actually fill rooms like this is when we have a lot of grassroots community support. In addition to the people who have already been thanked, I've got some people from the business community I want to thank by name really quick. Here it is. We need to thank Newberg Ford Concrete Solutions, Powell Butte Built Homes, George Fox University, S&H Logging, Syrian David Miller, The Saunders Company, Les Schwab, Delano's Supply, Del Boca Vista, Fence Master, Eagle Elsner, Will Cutts Company, All About Roofs, Riverside Homes, Ken and Cecilia Austin, Freeze Precast Products, Signature Paving Services, and Sunrise Landscape Services. Yay, thank you. So we weren't able to get all their logos on this, but the good news is we're talking about maybe forming a NASCAR team together, the first Red Cross NASCAR team, with the city of Newberg. Okay, with no further prologue, we're just going to get into it. Now, I think that when you think about the Red Cross, you usually think about really big disasters, particularly after last year, when in the space of the last 3 months of last year, we responded to more people from hurricanes than we had in the previous 5 years combined. But the first thing I want you to know about the Red Cross is the big ones are not our primary response. The small ones are what we spend most of our time doing. So first thing I want you to know is that every single week, the Red Cross in Oregon responds to 14 home fires. We provide money, food, water, lodging, and the troubling thing about these fires is people often die in them. So tonight we're going to talk about the big one, but I want you to know that we also spend a lot of time preparing people for the small ones. So here's something you should know. When a fire starts in your home, you have less time to escape than you think. You've got 2 minutes, which is why you need this in your bedrooms and in the main floors of your house. Also, you need to make sure you have at least 2 escape routes out of each room of your home and a reunification spot outside your home. So my kids, by the way, they sleep upstairs. And they know the drill. They know that if there's a fire, they're going to go right down the main steps, out the front door, meet at the apple tree, just like they're going to school. But they also know that if there's smoke coming up those stairs, they're going to take the secondary route, the less preferred one. And don't worry, your stuffed animals, they're going to follow. It's going to be okay. And my daughter knows that she is to go right through the boys' bedroom and knock out that screen. No, you will not get in trouble, I promise, sweetheart. And yes, you can crawl right out on the roof because there we have an emergency ladder waiting. You are to deploy it so that all of our little pirates and ninjas can get out safely. Oh, he never stops being cute. So, there are a couple of reasons that we are this prepared in the Eberline household. The first reason is that Steve Eberline, your speaker, is a bit of a weak spot when it comes to our preparedness. This is a text I received from my wife 2 months ago. Hey, love, just wanted to let you know that your candle privileges have been suspended indefinitely. Wonder why? Here's the story. You're cooking for kids, they're screaming, the bacon is burning, you've got onions on the stove, your eyes are watering, you light a candle because it helps your eyes, you push the candle a little bit too far underneath the cabinet, and you almost burn the house down. In response to that, you start doing fire drills with your children. The second reason that we went through all that trouble is because this is actually part of a massive Red Cross initiative throughout the United States. So I want you to know that our home fire campaign, whereby we are installing free smoke alarms with our own hands in homes that need them, have so far resulted in 18,000 free smoke alarms being installed in Oregon. And this is actually a nationwide initiative that so far has saved 381 lives. So here's the first thing I want you to know. You all have a prepare guide. That guide, grab it, take a look at it. You've got a guide. Don't look at the front, look at the back. Look at the back cover of your prepare guide. Now, if you're this gentleman here and you need free smoke alarms in your home right now or have a loved one who needs them, then what you're going to do is you're going to call that phone number that's right on the back of your prepare guide, or you're going to write the email and we'll come out. It's just like installing cable. If you're these people over here and you want to help us install free smoke alarms, you've got an opportunity to do that as well, because we're doing a major installation event on May 12th. There's information in your packet, and you can participate, and we need you to participate. And now, we're going to move on to talk about the big one. So, when it comes to Cascadia, what you're going to get out of tonight is a lot of really common sense information the nuts and bolts things that you need to do to get ready for an earthquake. That's what you're here for. But we can't only talk about the nuts and bolts thing. We also have to talk about preparedness culture. And here's why we have to talk about preparedness culture. Could you please just politely raise your hand if you have ever experienced a 9-point earthquake and tsunami? How many of you have a parent or a grandparent who has gone through a 9-point earthquake and tsunami? None of you. In the 100 presentations I've done, about 5 hands have come up. And why is that important? Part of the reason we're not ready for this big earthquake is we don't talk about it. And we don't talk about it because we don't know how to talk about it. That's part of what you're going to come out of tonight with. I'm going to teach you how to actually start changing culture so that we can get ready for a massive event that none of us have experienced. Now I need to tell you my story, because right now you think I'm a preparedness wizard. And listen, I'm pretty good, but I really don't bleed preparedness. When you look at who I am by nature, I'm going to give you some stories to give you an idea of who I really am. I'm the guy who flies to Morocco, who rents a car, who drives into the Sahara Desert, who didn't even check his radiator. True story, true story. Thank you, nomads. Yeah, they saved my bacon. It's not the best preparedness plan. I'm the guy who went to Brazil without a visa, which shortened my trip to Brazil from 2 weeks down to 90 minutes flat. A really, really unpleasant 90 minutes as well. My Portuguese is very, very rusty. Why are they yelling so much? I lived in New Orleans for 4 years, and I was there for 2 big hurricanes. And the best that my kit looked is right there. All true stories. This is me. I'm an Oregonian. I fly by the seat of my pants. I don't worry about things, and I don't keep a checklist. I'm probably a little bit like you. However, my story changed a lot in 2002, because in 2002, I fell in love with a girl. And she convinced me to move to the other side of the world, to the historically rich, geographically rugged, incredibly crowded country of Sri Lanka, which is right below India in the Indian Ocean. Now, in 2004, the most important things in my life happened. In October of 2004, we got married in Sri Lanka. And the month after we got married in November, I got dengue fever, also known as breakbone fever. I spent some really awful time in a really scary hospital, Nawaloka. Here's a tip. Never stay in a hospital where they put the ICU next to the morgue. We're just going to send this guy right on through. I wasn't pleased with their services, and I let them know. And then just as we emerged from this harrowing experience, we had our very first, very tropical Christmas together. And then the day after Christmas, this happened.
The quake's epicenter was off the island of Sumatra in northwestern Indonesia, where more than 4,000 people are thought to have died. In Sri Lanka, officials say more than 3,000 people have been killed and more than 1 million affected. In southern India, 3,000 people, mostly fishermen, are reported dead. At least 300 have been killed in southern Thailand, including some tourists, and hundreds of people are missing. And waves swamped the low-lying Maldive Islands, leaving the capital Male 2/3 underwater. Gareth Furby reports.
And you weren't there, but you remember, because you were watching CNN, you were watching Fox, and you could not stop watching as the casualties rose and rose and rose. It ended up being about 250,000 people who died from a 9.1 subduction zone earthquake and a massive tsunami that hit 16 different countries, including Sri Lanka, where 35,000 lives were taken. And this is where Lydia and I were that day, right on the coast, which seems like bad news. However, we were on the west coast, and the tsunami came from the east. So we were shielded by the island itself. And also, this is one of the only seawalls you're going to find in the entire country, and we were right next to it. So had, for example, we'd been just 10 miles south of there to Bentota, for example, where I proposed to Lydia 2 years before, or had we gone through with our original plan the day after Christmas, which involved taking the train all the way down the western coast to Galle, Sri Lanka, our story would have been a lot different. But the reason we weren't there that day has everything to do with that mosquito. I think I'm the only person in human history who gets to say, thank God for dengue fever. Saved our bacon. But this clearly changed our story. It changed our trajectory. First of all, as a direct consequence, I stopped being a Spanish teacher in Sri Lanka, which makes a lot of sense, because no one in Sri Lanka needs Spanish. And I joined my wife, who was already an aid worker, and we participated side by side in the largest humanitarian relief effort in human history, essentially. And then after that, we left. We left Sri Lanka, and we returned to Klamath Falls, Oregon. And the surprising thing about moving back to Klamath Falls from Sri Lanka, by the way, culture shock, but the surprising thing was leaving this subduction zone experience and then learning upon our return that we had just moved back into a subduction zone. And part of the confusing thing is that we had never heard about the risk growing up in Klamath Falls, Oregon. But then you start to do the math and you say, wait a second. Why didn't this have a bigger impact on our imagination? What are we looking at there? Mount St. Helens. Mount St. Helens is symptomatic of a subduction zone. Places that have volcanic eruptions like that also have 9-point earthquakes. And an interesting thing happened when I was a sophomore in geography class in Klamath Falls. My geography teacher said, and I quote him directly, "There never have been and there never will be earthquakes in Oregon." I'll give you one guess what happened the next day. Klamath Falls got a 6-point earthquake the next day. And same year, 1993, the spring break quake hit the Salem area. And you've got the Oregonians saying, Earth to Oregon, wake up. This is a small earthquake. We've got big ones coming. But the story goes on. Nisqually earthquake hit Washington in 2001. And the part I love both is they're saying, shocker. 6.8 shocker. Let me tell you why this was not a shocking earthquake, because they had had the same size earthquake in the same spot in 1949 and 1965. What's shocking about that? And this one really got our attention. It didn't happen here, it happened in Japan, but every newscast that you watched and every headline you read said, hey, Oregon, here's your future. Let this be our wake-up call. Did we wake up? No. And of all places to get involved, the New Yorker, all the way back in New York City, decided, you know what, these people need help. So they wrote a story about 11 million people living in a subduction zone that's overdue and not getting ready for it. It was a story about us. And it was so fascinating that it won a Pulitzer Prize. And did we wake up? Here's the general reaction. The general reaction to all of this is we get pretty hyper about preparedness 3 months of every 5 years. And then we go right back to normal. And if you ever bring this earthquake up in mixed company, I know the responses that you've received. Here's some of the things that people will say when you bring up the earthquake. Overreaction. You're paranoid. Nobody likes to be paranoid. Or, preparedness is for other people. aka not quite normal people. Or this isn't ours to worry about. Our grandchildren can take care of this. Or after the earthquake hits, I'm just gonna pack the kids up and we're gonna walk 100 miles across the Cascades Mountains with no water. It's not that bad. We like to oversimplify it. And I think we've all heard this one. Or let me tell you why people say these things. The reason for these responses is because this earthquake makes us uncomfortable. And when we are confronted with something uncomfortable, we have a lot of socially acceptable ways to say, stop. We're not talking about this, end of story. And that's part of the reason we're not culturally ready. So what we're gonna do here is I'm gonna teach you to start a different conversation. I'm going to take you back to 4th grade and give you the geography lesson that you never got in Oregon. I'm gonna take you to school and tell you what is going on with this earthquake. Here we are, here's our map. Now, the Pacific Northwest, I know you think that it's part of the United States. That is way too simple. We are part of a much larger, more important neighborhood. What are we looking at here? The Ring of Fire. And all these places along the Ring of Fire have a couple of basic important things in common. Starting all the way down here in New Zealand, big, beautiful mountains. New Zealand, Philippines, just a little bit further north, Russia, way further north, gorgeous. Tell me the second thing that all these places along the Ring of Fire have in common. Volcanoes and water and earthquakes. See, we avoid the topic, don't we? Well, mountains, rainfall, they have people. Earthquakes, y'all, earthquakes. Alaska, 1964, 9.2. Chile, 9.5, 1960. Japan, 2011, 9.0. Mexico, September 19th, 1985. Mexico, September 19th, 2017. Same big earthquake, same place, same day, 32 years apart. And here we've got the Mexican Red Cross. Up till this day, a lot of them were in Houston, Texas. Any guesses why? What was going on in Houston September of last year? Hurricane Harvey. They were in our shelters doing our translation and interpreting work up to the point that they needed to go back home. The other thing these places have in common is they are along big, huge plate boundaries. Most of them are right along this big, massive puzzle piece, the Pacific Plate. The interesting exception is us. Oregon and Washington do not touch the Pacific Plate. We're touching this teeny, teeny, tiny plate. Oh, boy, I'll give you $1 if anybody knows the name of this plate. The Juan de Fuca Plate. I don't have any cash on me, but yeah, I'm good for it. The Juan de Fuca Plate. So let's take a good close look at what the Juan de Fuca Plate is. We're gonna take a look right off the coast. You see that green dotted line right there? That's the Juan de Fuca Plate. And all this plate is, it's just a big old puzzle piece. And I mean that as literally as you can mean it. If we were to get into a little submarine and go out to see what the border of the Juan de Fuca Plate and the Pacific Plate looks like, that's what you got. Yeah, that's mind-blowing, right? So there is the Juan de Fuca Plate, which is right up against Oregon right now. And there you've got the Pacific Plate. And here's your $5 question. Who's that? Juan de Fuca. Juan de Fuca. I guarantee you will never see that man's face again. Okay, so here's the quick story of what's going on. You've got the Juan de Fuca Plate, which is moving about 1 inch per year towards us. And over time, it has created this What is this? Cascades Mountains, hence the Cascadia subduction zone. The same story is happening with the Pacific Plate, which is moving at about 3 inches per year westward, and over time it's created, amongst other things, the Japanese Alps. You see some similarities here? It's the same mountain range. It's created by the same process, which is subduction, and subduction also has a scary side effect, which is earthquakes, exactly. So let's take a look at what causes these plates to move in the first place. So I'm going to start with this lava lake in Africa, because it's a good kind of starter spot. So when lava comes up, it freezes. It forms into plates. And then when more lava comes up, those plates need to make room, and so they spread in different directions. Simple, right? So let's take a look at this same process on a grand scale. So up from the core of the Earth, we have this column of magma that's rising right up to the surface, right up to the underside of the plates, these plates being right out at sea. And from there, they diverge right along this spot. Now, the Juan de Fuca plate, as I showed before, it's being drugged by that magma right underneath our feet right now, in the same way that the Pacific plate is being drugged underneath the island of Japan. This is subduction. Now, that plate, it's not done because it's going to melt from the depth, and the friction form magma again, rise to the surface, and create the landscape. Creates things like Mount Fuji, or closer to home, Mount Hood, or Mount Rainier. And it shouldn't be a huge surprise that that same process created this. And again, what year was Mount St. Helens? 1980. And what is kind of surprising, though, is that in 1993, this was still the seismic hazard map of the United States. This is like geology humor, okay? Because what it says is that we've got an earthquake zone that starts in Southern California, goes up to the Oregon-California border, disappears, and then reappears as soon as you cross the Columbia River. So back in the 90s, we're saying, I don't like to go to Vancouver because I'm afraid of the earthquakes. You're gonna hate the new map. Here's the new map. Thank you, OSU. The new map gives a very realistic depiction. And reading this one's pretty simple. Hot, pink, and red are bad. We're standing in the most seismically prone place in the United States, and we just learned about it recently. So let's take another look at the Juan de Fuca plate, because what you saw before, it kind of gave the impression that it's just really moving gently right underneath us, and it's no big deal. It's like sheet metal on sheet metal. That's not the case at all. So I want to take a look at the subduction margin right there. And I want to show you what's happening 70 miles out at sea at this very moment. So here's the Juan de Fuca plate to the left. And it is sliding right underneath the continental plate, which we're standing on right now. Now what happens is that these two plates are locked. And when they become locked, the continental plate bows upwards, just like a ruler being pushed at two ends. And eventually, after several hundred years, it has to give. It collapses. And not only that, that fault line, which is several hundred miles long, starts to unzip. And so you've got places along the fault that are thrusting upward. You've got other places that are actually collapsing downward. In both cases, whether it's going up or down, it's displacing trillions of gallons of water at once. And that wave goes north, south, west, and east simultaneously and grows tall in shallow water.
10メーターだね。うわこれ第2弾来るからな。
Sorry for exposing your children to so much Japanese profanity. So, Newberg. Here we are, Newberg. Here's my first question for you. Are you worried about that big wave coming and putting your entire beautiful city right underwater. 1, 2, 3. Good. There's no risk. You're not going to see any aquatic life going up and down downtown Newberg, okay? And there's not a lot of good news tonight, so I suggest you take that little piece of good news and you embrace it, okay? So, tsunami risk? None. And if you happen to be a little bit closer in, if you're on, say, in Portland, you see the Willamette, or maybe you're on the Columbia, and you see some of this action, just like we saw in Mexico in this last earthquake, that's not the tsunami coming up a river. All that is, what would you expect of a bathtub when you start shaking it back and forth? It sloshes. That's sloshing. That's not tsunami, okay? Tsunamis do not travel up rivers because tsunamis cannot turn. Simple as that. As soon as they have to turn up the Columbia, they go up the bank and they run out of momentum. So we're not at any tsunami risk this far in. But we do have a big shaking risk. So let's take a look at the shaking risk that we face here in Newberg. Now, right here, again, we're looking at the Pacific Northwest. Right here, take a look at where we're turning red along that subduction zone. That's where this action is starting to take place that we saw in that previous video. You see these yellow lines? That's not the tsunami, that's the shaking that's starting to travel through the ground towards us. And the first shaking that we're gonna feel is called a P wave. The P wave, it's a jolt. It's like a jackhammering under your feet. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but it's the moment you all look at each other and say, "Woo, what was that?" And what that is a warning, because these slower, more damaging waves are going to follow the P waves. These are S waves. This is when the land begins to move vertically and laterally at once, which seems a bit impossible, but that's how it works. Now I speed this up, and quite suddenly you're gonna see this is a big earthquake. And when you think big earthquake, you think California, and you think a lot of shaking. And yes, this is gonna be a lot of shaking. When I say big earthquake, I mean a lot of geography is covered. Have you noticed with California earthquakes, they're always named after cities? Loma Prieta, or the San Francisco earthquake, 1905, because they impact a city. This is an earthquake with a traveling epicenter that, in worst case scenario, a 9-point scenario, goes down to Northern California and up to Vancouver Island, Canada, simultaneously impacting 3 states and 2 countries all at one time. When we talk big earthquake, that's a very different animal than what you and I grew up learning about. So, I'm not just making this up. We've seen 43 massive earthquakes, 8 points and 9 points, along that fault line in the last 10,000 years, which the math comes out to roughly 1 big earthquake every 243 years. Do you have any questions? Oh, I'll save my water break for later then. The last one was January 26th, 1700 at 9 p.m. on the dot. And here's how we know. We've got 3 good reasons that we know about this. First of all, there were witnesses. Native Americans were here for the last 9-point earthquake. I'm just gonna tell you a quick story because it's a good one. So this is the Thunderbird, by the way. You know the Thunderbird. If you look at the top of most totem poles in the Pacific Northwest, bam, Thunderbird. So here's a good story. There's a story that comes out of Vancouver Island, Canada that basically goes like this. There was a big battle between the Thunderbird and the evil whale. This evil whale was eating up all the other whales from the ocean and starving the villagers. So the villagers said, "Hey, Thunderbird, take care of this whale for me." And the Thunderbird said gladly, plucked this whale right out of the ocean, and as it dropped it to the beach, it caused a lot of shaking. And the ocean didn't like this at all. So it threw itself upon the shores to reclaim its prize. Spooky, right? So if we are to believe that this was a story about an earthquake and tsunami event, we would expect it to be fairly common along the Cascadia subduction zone amongst various tribes. There are 19 different tribes from Northern California up to Canada who have various stories about the Thunderbird or just factual accounts of the shaking and waves that they experienced. The other reason we know about this last earthquake is the forests along the coast of Washington. Now, some of these forests, they have a curious thing in common, that for some reason, out of the blue, they dropped right into the tidal zone, and they died from all the saltwater intake. And curiously, those tree ring samples suggest that they died between September of 1699 and May of 1700. It's kind of matching up to what we're talking about, right? Where's the 9 p.m. come from? I told you before, tsunamis don't go one direction. They go 4 directions. That last 9-point earthquake created a tsunami so big that it went all the way across the ocean to impact a country that has tracked diligently its own earthquake and tsunami activity since 599 AD. That country is Japan, and they called this the orphan tsunami because where's the earthquake? This one broke the rules. This tsunami just came out of nowhere, and it wasn't until 1993 that these forests matched up with that event and gave a lot more credence to these silly stories that we heard ever since coming to the United States. That's our triangulation. And I'll take a moment for a question. Just about the history, just about the science. Do you have any questions about anything you've heard up to this moment? Way in the back, be loud. It's a great question. How long does it take for this whole earthquake to start and finish? It depends on the size, depending on if it ends up being an 8-point or 9-point. Worst case scenario, it should be about 5 minutes of shaking, which is a lot longer than you want. Yes, sir? That's a good question. What's the difference between a deep quake and one that's close to the surface? So this is a little bit different than both of those, because a shallow quake is when the earthquake occurs within the continental plate itself, such as like the Portland Hills would be a shallow quake, causes a lot of jolting and shaking. Whereas a deep earthquake like Nisqually in 2001 is essentially where the Juan de Fuca plate had released pressure way, way, way down below the feet of Olympia. But those are both different than this earthquake. Any other questions before we move on? Go ahead. Yeah. Yep. That I don't have an answer for. Down to that level, I'm not sure. You bring up a good point. It's one that I don't have an answer to. Sorry about that. I don't know everything, but I don't pretend to know things I don't. So I'll promise you that. So let's keep rolling. Let's start talking about people. Let's start talking about us and how we behave during earthquakes. So let's start with what you should do during an earthquake. And you've seen this before, right? When the ground begins to shake, you drop, you cover, and you hold. But let's make sure you understand why. Why do you drop to the ground the moment that you feel the ground shake? Why? So you don't fall. That's it. This is all about injury prevention. You drop to the ground so you don't fall and hurt yourself. And you take cover. Why? All the stupid stuff that can fall on your head. That's what you're protecting yourself from. Light fixtures, things like that. And you hold on to whatever you are beneath. Why? Yeah, it's going to get away from you. The entire Pacific Northwest is shaking, and if you don't hold on to the chair or the table, it gets away from you like an umbrella in a hurricane. You drop, you cover, you hold. Simple, right? And you practice. Welcome to your cultural reluctance. That's what you feel right now in your tummy. See, has anyone ever participated in the Great Shakeout, where you're at work and you're wearing your button-ups and you've got your jeans on and we actually make you pretend it's an earthquake? This is how you feel about it. This eye roll needs to be way slowed down for you to appreciate. Lame! Oh, I hate this so much. First of all, we need to use our imagination. This is just a mannequin. This is only a mannequin. Just imagine how much better that mannequin would be had it successfully gotten under that desk. So first, you need to appreciate that the objects around us can become suddenly volatile and even lethal. But it doesn't quite explain why you have to practice drop, cover, hold. The reason you have to practice is because you might not be alone during this earthquake. And that's a big problem when it comes to behavior. So if we take a look at Japan, 2011, so here we see the manager. She's not dropping, not covering, not holding. Shockingly enough, she's recruiting. Hold that wine rack way up high. Oh my goodness. I think this guy's from out of town, and he's looking for guidance in the cereal section because he's not seeing it from the local staff. Same earthquake, 2011. No one gets hurt in this video. No one gets hurt. I want you to take a look over her shoulder as this starts to play out. Now, this is a building built to Japanese standards, highest in the world, and nonetheless, the facade does peel off of that building. And worse than that, you've got one well-dressed businessman after another running like crazy. And part of the reason you see those reactions, even in a place like Japan, where they're very experienced with this, is because, oh, there we go. Oh, I'm gonna have a heart attack. Is because this is your brain on earthquakes. Now, I need to explain this. See this part of your brain, your frontal cortex? That's the smart part of your brain. If you've ever raised a child or driven a car or held a job or even tried to get a job, you did it with your frontal cortex. And your frontal cortex is slow. It's methodical. It weighs pros and cons. And so basically, your brain throws the frontal cortex out the window and lights up your amygdala. Your amygdala are where your survival instincts are, and they're explosive. The three things that they do best during earthquakes are they take orders, just like you saw up top. They become overwhelmed and do nothing whatsoever, or they just tell you to run and try to find a place where there's not an earthquake occurring. None of those responses work for earthquakes. And the only way to get your amygdala to do the right thing is through repeated physical practice. Tell me what firefighters are doing when they're not fighting fires. Practicing, because they know that fighting fires is an instinctual activity, and so is drop, cover, hold. So getting just a little deeper into this, a review. When the ground starts to shake, you're gonna drop, and you're gonna find the sturdiest thing that you can get under and hold on. If you've only got a chair, you're gonna use that chair to protect the back of your head and neck. If you have a small child,
How are you? Ooh, oh, earthquake, earthquake, earthquake.
Okay.
Earthquake. Get safe.
Okay. Oh, it's okay. I got you.
you're gonna take cover, and you're gonna use your own body to cover your child. And pretty good friend there, right? That's a 6-week-old, and she's doing stunts for my videos. I really appreciate that. Once your children are about 3 or 4, you're gonna start doing drills with them so that they can do this on their own, and you start training those instincts early. If you don't have anything to get under, just make the best decision you can. I don't wanna be under a big projector. I don't wanna be under a chandelier. I don't wanna be next to a brick wall. I don't wanna be next to a plate glass window. You make the best decision you can, and you drop so that you don't fall down. If you're in a wheelchair, you're gonna lock those wheels immediately. You're gonna grab something, cover the back of your head, and you're gonna hold on. If you're in a stadium situation, like a movie theater, you might move over a chair if you need to, if you've got something big under you, but then you're just gonna lower as low as you can, like taking the brace position in an airplane. Okay, are you ready? We're drilling. Go, earthquake drill. in the clear. Nice work, Newberg. Nicely done. Good job, and thank you. There's nothing I hate more than doing that drill by myself. So I really appreciate your participation. How long was that? 1 minute. How long's the real deal? 5. So in addition to the actual shaking, during a real earthquake, those lights, they went out immediately, which you expect, right? Of course the lights went out. What you didn't expect is that all the sprinklers turned on. Like, oh, this is way wetter than I thought it was going to be. The noises are real, but the noises aren't anything to do with an earthquake siren. That's not the thing. It's any like alarm systems native to a building are likely to kick off during that earthquake, in addition to all the car alarms in the parking lot. So, okay, we got through it. Now what? Good on ya. Good on ya. Where? In the building we were just in? Let's go outside. Not for real, not right now, okay? Because it took a lot of work getting you here. But after the shaking is done, you go outside immediately. If you're here, go outside. If you're at work, go outside. Home, go outside. I don't care where you are. You're going to go outside immediately after the earthquake because the aftershocks are coming. And they're going to come soon. And they're likely to be strong. And the building you were in survived, which is great. However, we don't know how it's going to fare in the aftershocks because it's a damaged building. So we want to get outside so we can collect ourselves, calm down, and let some of those big aftershocks play out before we look at that building and say, is this a safe place for me to go back into? And as you're outside, you've got some things you need to do immediately. Injuries, you've got a first aid kit. You're going to start treating injuries, your own and those of loved ones. If you smell gas in your home, turn off the gas, quick. If you don't smell gas, you don't need to turn off the gas. That's the basic rule. Smell it, turn it off. Don't smell it, don't turn it off. Every adult in your home needs to know how to turn off the gas. If there are any fires in your home, put them out immediately before they spread. If you don't have any fires, that's great news. But what you're gonna do is you're gonna take that fire extinguisher and put it on your front lawn. Why? Your neighbors aren't as prepared as you, and their fire becomes your fire very quickly. So you put it there just in time because they're gonna think, I wish I had oh, there it is. Bingo. Then after that, you're just gonna make a simple sign, either I'm okay or I need help, and you put it on your front door. It's important to let people know that you're okay so that when the responders come through your neighborhood, they know that they don't need to prioritize you. They can start taking care of the people who need it most. Now that you know that that's going to be our earthquake, there are some things you're going to do this weekend to make your home safer during the shaking. Here's your simple toolkit. What you're going to do is you're going to get some L brackets. You're going to get some nice long screws. You're going to get a stud finder. You don't have one, but your neighbor does. Go ask. And you're going to go to Amazon or someplace and get some earthquake straps. 4 simple, inexpensive things. And then you're going to take a look at your dining room. This is my dining room. And you're going to say, you know what? I don't want that big, tall piece of furniture to fall over. You're going to find the studs that are right behind it, and you're going to secure that big, tall piece of furniture with those earthquake straps so it doesn't fall over. And then you're going to turn around, and you're going to see that there's a piano on the other side of the room. And yeah, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to find the studs right behind that piano. With a stud finder, you're going to take those L brackets and you're going to secure the piano right against the wall. One tip on this, you should really talk to your spouse about it first. Oh, man. That was a tough conversation. However, the winning argument is, listen, we're teaching our kids to do drop, cover, hold under that dining room table. We need to make sure that this big, tall cabinetry and that community center piano doesn't go and careen against it. It makes our kids safer. Now, a few other things, a few wild cards as far as where you might find yourself during an earthquake. You might be outside already. And if you are outside, just be mindful, you don't want to be right next to buildings. You don't want to be under trees, because branches can break and some trees can actually topple over from liquefaction. What's that? We'll get to it later. And if you're in your car, here's what you're going to do. If you're in your car, you're going to pull over strategically. You don't want to be next to a bridge, next to a building, under an overpass. Pull over strategically, park your car, turn it off, keep your seatbelt on, and just lean back. Lean back in case the airbag goes off. I don't think it will, but it might. So let's just not get hit in the face, because you're already having a bad day, right? And you're just gonna ride this out in your car. One of the things you need is cover, right? Cover you've got if you're in your car. If you're in your bedroom, the rules change quite a bit. So first of all, if you're in your bedroom, you're probably asleep. And that's important, because that means you missed the P wave. That warning shake, you missed it. You slept right through it, which means once the big shaking starts, you're already in it, which is why you have moved that terracotta clock from over your the bedstand, and you took care of the entertainment center. You've secured all the things in your bedroom so they don't fall over. And once you realize what's going on, you're just going to take that pillow, put it over your head, and you're just going to ride your bed as it visits every single wall of your bedroom. That's your plan. You're not going to get under your bed because you're a full-fledged adult and you're too big. You don't fit. And even if you could fit, that bed weighs 200 pounds, and it's going to jump up and down for 5 minutes. You don't want to be under there. So then the shaking stops, and you've got the things you need right next to you. Here's what you need right next to you in your bedroom. You're barefoot, so you've got a sturdy pair of shoes right there, right next to your bed. You have tied them together, and you have tied them to the foot of your bed. Because if you don't, shoe A and shoe B are going to go to two different places. You've got a crowbar right next to your bed. The reason for that is if you look at that door, see the exit door? Imagine how hard it's going to be to open that door after that door frame twists out of shape. So you've got a crowbar so you can pry those doors open. And you've got a flashlight because the lights went out and they're not going to come back on for 3 months. So we need to be able to get out of our house. Better than a flashlight is a headlamp so you can keep your hands free. Better yet, put it all into a little kit. This is my wife and my bedroom kit. Shoes, little first aid kit, headlamps, sweater, crowbar. Simple as that, ready to go. I'm asking a lot of this guy. That computer's all the way up there. So, you might go here this summer, right? Do you think you're still going to go to the beach this summer? I hope you do. I hope you do. I will. So, here's what to be mindful of when you go to the beach. First of all, you're going to start paying attention to the tsunami hazard zone signs. What those signs show you is that you are within reach by elevation of a tsunami. And tsunamis are all about elevation. It's all about getting high enough up to stay outside the reach of a tsunami. And there are different types of tsunamis, but really the one we're worried about is a local tsunami, like they saw in Japan. Local tsunamis come in fast, they come in high, they come in far, they come in with very little warning. So here's my first question to you. How do you know, if you're on the beach, that a tsunami is on the way? What's going to be your warning? It blows my mind that everyone in America knows that. Yes, if the ocean disappears in front of you, and we're talking disappears, you won't confuse it with a low tide. If the ocean disappears like it did in Sri Lanka, and you can see coral reef trees, and hopefully not like Sri Lanka, where people actually rushed out as far as they could with stakes in their hand because they thought they were going to claim new land to sell to the Hilton. True story. True story. If the ocean disappears, tsunami's coming. Hightail it out. But it's not always going to disappear first. So what's another warning that we can expect if we're on the coast? The earthquake. The earthquake, that's all you need. If you shook for 5 minutes, tsunami's coming. Guarantee it, I promise. If you just shook, the tsunami's coming. So after that 5 minutes of shaking, you've got 10 minutes. 10 minutes to get from wherever you are, follow those evacuation route signs up to the evacuation site. And you're gonna do it on foot. Why? Why on foot? Yes, because there are no roads, and everybody's getting in their car anyway, so it's causing a traffic jam. That's why. Make sense? So that's tsunami on paper. Let me show you tsunami in practice. So first of all, I want you to know that I take my kids to the beach every single year knowing all of this. I take my 4-year-old Cy, I take my spirited 8-year-old Zoe, and I take Jack.
Oh, I accidentally put sand in my mouth.
Yeah, Jack is awesome. So, and the place that we usually go is Lopez Island, off the coast of Washington. And it was our last trip to Lopez Island that my kids noticed something. They said, "Dad, are we in a tsunami zone?" I said, "Yes, we are." "Why aren't there any signs, Dad?" And so Dad, being a Red Crosser, went and had a conversation with a park ranger.
As the park ranger here, what is your response like for the campers if there was an earthquake? What would you do? What would you expect?
Well, pretty much immediately I'd come down and really inform every one of them that they need to immediately move up to higher ground.
And do you think that most people that are here right now would understand what to do in the case of a tsunami risk if you weren't here to help them out?
Many of the campers this time of year from all over, many of them are not going to know.
What's the moral of this story? We can't assume that when we go to the beach that the people who should know what to do know what to do. Because the plan at the beach you go to might be at 3 o'clock in the morning after a big earthquake to rouse miles and miles of campers to inform them in their various stages of intoxication that the tsunami's coming and we know to go there. That's too late, and that's a bad plan. So first moral of the story is go to the beach ready and think about it beforehand, how you're going to evacuate, because the beach you go to might not be as ready as you want it to be. And what if it is ready? What if you go to a beach like Gold Beach? And Gold Beach is a gold standard, really. Gold Beach, way down in southern Oregon. In Gold Beach, you can find a few things that you want to see. You can find tsunami evacuation route signs. You can find a tsunami siren. Okay, good. And on this particular day, there was even Kelly. Kelly is a person who has been to my presentation twice. She knew what to do. And there was a false alarm with the siren. And she watched things play out. You need to understand what might happen. Hey, Jacob, remember I warned you, this might happen. So Jacob, our IT guy, is gonna go and click the play button, and we're gonna hope it works. Go, Jacob, go, Jacob, go, Jacob, go, Jacob, go, Jacob. You gotta hope, people. You gotta really want it. You gotta want it. Come on, Jacob. Come on, Jacob. Jacob. Hit it. Jacob, by hit escape and hit current slide real quick. If it don't work, then you just have to trust me. That was a really fascinating story. Here we go. And Kelly and...
So it was my birthday, so we were at Gold Beach, and we did a bonfire right at sunset, and all of a sudden the alarm started going off, and I freaked out. I was like, I dropped the hot dog, and I'm like, Claire, it's a tsunami! We gotta go! But then I started looking around, and nobody was reacting. I mean, everybody kind of stopped. It was just, on the beach, like, they had their dogs, and they were kind of like, Then I looked over, and I saw a group that was bonfiring, so I then ran over to them, and they were from another country. So I was like, what do we do? And they were like, we don't know. part of my not leaving the beach, even though I know I should, was because nobody else did, so I thought maybe I was being silly.
I need you to meditate on that for 5 quiet seconds. She knew exactly what to do. And she went up to some Dutch tourists, and they're like, "We don't know, we're from Amsterdam." And what did she do? She wanted to stay with the crowd because her amygdala are all lit up, and she's scared, and she took the comfort in the foreigners who didn't know what to do, and she stayed. And you think, I would never do that. Part of what you need to imagine on the beach isn't just the shaking, isn't just the evacuation, it's the possibility that you're gonna be the first and maybe even the only person to start going up the hill. And you need to be the example for everyone else who doesn't know what to do. Make sense? So, let's talk about the infrastructure a bit. What is it gonna look like after this earthquake? And knowing what it looks like after the earthquake helps us to build kits. So here are a few things to point out. You see this? You are right here. And by right here, I mean you right now are in the middle of a network of millions of invisible people who do things for you. You know what these people do for you? They give you running water, and they help you flush your toilet, and they bring you gas heat, and they bring you electricity. And they bring it to your home and your business, and you never think about it. And you'll never meet any of these people. And the things that aren't coming right into your home right now, you know what you do? You go and get them. You get in your car, you get your credit card, or you call your phone, and you get the other things you need, such as groceries, such as medical care. You do it every single day, and you do it thoughtlessly, and you're helpless without these things. So here's the thing about this earthquake. What the earthquake takes out is our access to all of those things that you used 44 times today alone. And let me show you how it takes those things out. You see these? Now, according to the Oregon Department of Transportation, bridges built before 1975 are not ready. So with those bridges, and the Willamette River is a really good snapshot of what's going on throughout Oregon, we really quickly lost a few things. We lost the ability to drive, get medical care, and get groceries, just like that. North Yamhill Bridge, not looking good. South Yamhill, not looking good either. Anyone come in from Vancouver tonight? Well, we'd be happy to have you. Who's heard of liquefaction? Here's what liquefaction is. See the soil beneath our feet is saturated with water most of the time. And during an earthquake, all that soil gets squished together, and the water doesn't have any place to go. And so it squishes all that water that's locked between the grains of soil up to the surface. This is Christchurch, New Zealand, right after their 2010 earthquake. That's liquefaction. That's the water locked in the soil beneath our feet coming up to the surface. And you think, that seems like an inconvenience. It's actually a lot worse than an inconvenience. Because if you can imagine, when we build things on soil that becomes pudding, those things fail. Japan, 2011. Christchurch, 2010. Japan, 2011. And that's what you can see. Let's imagine what the infrastructure looks like right below our feet. So again, when we get to the things that we are helpless without, gas, sewers, running water, just like that, we lost those three. We still have these things, kind of, for a moment, right? Well, the other thing that's going to liquefy is Oregon's fuel corridor. 90% of our fuel is just north of the St. John's Bridge, sitting on land that's going to liquefy. So if we have a few generators that are still working at this point, allowing us to have these things, we just lost those things. And at this point, you get it. At this point, you all look at each other and say, this is a big, big deal. We really need help. So what does help look like after this? So I have to remind you that this isn't your earthquake, y'all. This is, oh, look up there. This is not Newberg's earthquake. This is actually the entire Pacific Northwest. And what you just experienced here in Newberg has been experienced all the way from Northern California up to Vancouver Island, Canada, along with the infrastructural breakdown as well. And you're thinking, you know what? I can't wait for FEMA to start landing planes in PDX to help me. Those runways liquefied. So that's not happening. We're relying on Redmond Airport. Redmond. It's a long way away. It's on the wrong side of the Cascades Mountains. We don't want to fly Redmond, but we have to. But at least we're not Washington. Washington's relying on Moses Lake. Do you know where Moses Lake is? No one does. Only FEMA knows. It's a secret. So what that means for us, you see this area of the Pacific Northwest? This is the part that's hardest hit. And the bad part about that is that's where everybody lives. So here's our story. We've got 11 million people in this space that's trying to get help from 2 little airports. So now, use your imagination. How realistic do you think a quick response is? You know in common sense now. It's like, okay, I get it. This is going to take a long time for a full response effort, which is why we're going to ask you to get ready for 2 weeks. You need to expect to be completely on your own for at least 2 weeks before you see a coordinated strategic effort from FEMA, from the United States, from the Red Cross to start helping you. Which means until then, that's your situation. That's not an earthquake, by the way. That's how eminent domain plays out in Shanghai, okay? But it's a good metaphor for you and me, because you need to be prepared to be stuck without all the things that you rely on. This is the worst part of the presentation. This is the bottom. But actually, culturally, we know how to crawl out. And I'll show you how. Reach into our culture, and I'm going to remind you that subduction zones don't just create earthquakes. They also create this, and that, and that. And summer's coming. What do we do with this in the Pacific Northwest? What do we do during the summer? Y'all, we camp. So culturally, let's start rethinking what camping is. Camping is when you willingly go to a remote place for an extended period of time without services. Maybe you don't do it, but you know someone who does it really well. So here's what Cascadia Preparedness is. Rather than going camping, camping's gonna come to us. So being ready means being ready to spontaneously camp in the 3 places you will find yourself. You will either be at home, in your car, or at work during this earthquake. I almost guarantee it. And these are my kits. And by kit, there's nothing cute and small and Red Crossy about my kit. It's a 45-gallon Rubbermaid Tough Neck on wheels. Biggest kit I have is at home. The second biggest kit I have is in my car, because my car spends time at home, so it's an extra layer, and it spends time at work. And it comes to me in Newberg, so I'm ready should I be stranded here for a week or more during an earthquake. And my smallest kit is at work. Where do I work? When you're at the Red Cross, you don't need a big kit, y'all. You don't. You're kind of taken care of. You might need a much bigger kit for your work to be ready. And basically, what you're trying to do with your kits is you're trying to put a glorified Band-Aid on the fact that you just lost all the services. We're going to build up those services in your kits for 2 weeks. And let me show you how. By the way, this guide that you have on your lap, everything I talk about is right there. Okay, so you don't have to furiously take notes. I'm going to show you how we put things back together. We're going to start right here. We're going to put our water back together. To get our water ready, I want you to have at least 14 gallons of water per person in your home, which is a lot of water, a lot more than we usually do. Page 24 of your guide tells you how, but I'm going to give you a few pointers on water. For one, I like aquatainers. This is what I use, aquatainer. 7 gallons each, that's 2 per person. They're very durable. They're meant to hold water for a long time. And for bonus points, they're stackable. Love aquatainers. Nice little spigot. If you want to do it on the cheap, that's fine. Use pop bottles. Tap water, perfectly fine. Don't try the same trick with milk jugs. It's all about the quality of the plastic. Pop bottles has a very high durable grade of plastic, whereas the jugs of water you buy at the grocery store, it's a low grade, as is milk jugs. You can always melt ice if it's during the winter. By the way, this might be during the winter. Stop getting ready for July earthquakes. It might be a December earthquake. Water filters. If you camp, you know life straws. They're meant to pull microbes out of the water and puddles and things like that. It's not meant to pull contaminants out of rivers, by the way. And your canned foods, also a good source of water. And that's a good source of water. It's ready. You've got a water heater, likely, in your basement right now. But a word on the water heater. It's the most dangerous spot in your house if it's not ready. Because, first of all, during the earthquake, if it's not ready, it will crack and you lose 80 gallons of water. And then it catches fire, and your family's disappointed. And you think, oh, it can't get any worse than this. Well, then that fire actually starts to spread house to house to house in your neighborhood, just like you saw in 1989 Marina District of San Francisco. So one of the first things you're going to do this weekend is take a look at that water heater. If it's not ready, go to A-Boy, go to George Moreland, and secure it. Also, don't forget this. And if you don't need that fire extinguisher, what do? Advice so nice, I make it twice. There it is. So one more thing about your water heater. Before you drink anything from that water heater, I want to remind you that the pipes outside your home are broken. And because of liquefaction, you've got all this kind of slurry mess going on, which is very quickly going to contaminate the water that goes into your water heater. So you need to make sure to turn your water valve off to your home before you start drinking any of that water. Isolate the good water in your home. That's water in a nutshell. Next, groceries, food. I want you to have 2 weeks of shelf-stable food in your home. Make sure it's food that you want to eat. Don't go all waxed beans, okay? This is gonna be a tough period. You gotta make sure you get something that you actually are willing to eat. And by shelf-stable, something that can sit on the shelf for at least 5 years or more. So we're looking for 42 meals for each person in your home. You can do it little by little by little over 2 years. That's how my wife and I did. Before you eat any of those rations, though, make sure you just eat the food that's sitting in your kitchen right now. And your kitchen's been remodeled. They all have. So as you look at your kitchen and imagine eating out of this, you're going to start looking for these foods. You're going to start looking for fruits and vegetables. Get to the breads before they mold. Get to the leftovers before they spoil. And start cooking up meat as it thaws out before you eat any of your rations. And speaking of those meats, that's a preparedness item right there. So if you want your barbecue to be ready, I would suggest, if you can, just make sure you never run out of propane. And if you can, have a backup. Also, Coleman, to make sure you can boil some water. They need food and water too. So when you do the calculation of how much food and water you need, don't forget your pets. We have a lot of pet-specific guidance on page 22 of your guide. And yes, you're still going to want to brush your teeth, you're still going to want to floss, you're still going to need tampons, you're still going to need toilet paper. You need to make sure you have all the things you need on a daily basis ready and in your kit. There we go. There's your grocery problem. Check. Next. Gas heat is out. It's going to be cold. You're likely going to be sleeping outside for a while, which is why you want a tarp and you want a rope. What do you do with tarp and rope? Shelter, exactly. The other thing you can do with a tarp is what? Water catchment. Water catchment, exactly. Both of those things. Take all your camping stuff as well and start putting it next to your kit. Speaking of cold, emergency blankets. They can hold on to 95% of your body heat. They're big enough for a family of 5. They cannot be refolded, by the way. And they go a lot further if you've got a pair of hot hands. Okay, a pair of hot hands can get you through the coldest night in Oregon as long as you know how to use hot hands properly. Where do you put them? Armpits, exactly. You put them in your armpits because you've got a massive vein going right through your armpit. And if you can warm that blood up right before it dumps into your heart, you're circulating newly warmed blood throughout your body. And poor hot hands, think about this. What a marketing miss. Think the opportunity they had to properly explain their product to their audience, and they missed it. But they don't take my calls. Next, first aid. We don't have access to doctors and pharmacists. First aid kit, this is a no-brainer. First aid training, so you know how to use the kit, advised. Where can you get first aid training? There you go, that's a good idea, Red Cross. You need a dust mask, and you need to make sure you have goggles. And the reason for that, we saw in Mexico, September 2017. When buildings crumble, they release particulates that make the air borderline unbreathable for a period of time. So get some proper N94 dust masks for each member of your family in your kit. Probably a third of you wear glasses. The next time you age out of a prescription, take that old prescription, put it into a kit so you don't have to go through this blind. And if you take an important medication that you rely on, you need to start having a conversation with your doctor now. And that conversation starts with this. Have you heard of the Cascadia subduction zone? Literally, because your doctor may not yet have thought about the fact that they are not going to be available to you and pharmacies will not open for you to refill these prescriptions. Some doctors will encourage you to refill on day 25 rather than day 30, so you can set a little extra aside. In some cases, rare cases, they might even prescribe you a larger dose every month with the understanding that you're going to take that extra, put it into a kit. In any case, start talking to your doctor. And the next time you empty an important bottle of pills, take that tag off and put it into your kit. So that if you find yourself at a Red Cross shelter after a big earthquake and the doctors start flying in from Missoula, Montana and Kansas City, Missouri, you're able to show them this is the medication I need. No questions, they will get it for you. Next, your phone doesn't work anymore. After an earthquake, the only thing that will likely work on your phone is texting. That's where you start. You might be able to text each other, but when 11 million people call each other at once, it doesn't work. So start with texting. And as a backup, you've got radios. Emergency radios and just battery-powered radios are where you're going to get up-to-date information on what to do, where to go, what not to do, where the gas mains have broken, when is FEMA going to get here. Where you find that information? 91.5. OPB. And also, you've got a map of your city. Because you are so reliant on GPS, you can't find your way to the post office anymore. So that when OPB tells you you need to go to place X, you're going to get your map out and say, oh, that's how we get there. Quite literally. You're going to start writing down the phone numbers that are important to you that are right now on your phone. Because as soon as they disappear from your phone dying, you're only going to remember how to call your best friend from high school. Because we don't memorize numbers anymore. And one of the numbers you need to have on this list is someone from outside the Cascadia subduction zone. We have one point of contact in Chicago, Illinois. A woman I've never met named Leah. But the important thing about Leah is she has a list of all my family, all my wife's family, my parents, and we are all trained to call Leah immediately after the earthquake as we can so we can check in. So she can tell me my dad's okay and my mom's okay and my wife's okay. Any ham radio buffs? Thank you very much. If you are not into ham radio, I would encourage you to get into it because ham radios, they require a license, but they will function after the Cascadia subduction zone. Next, the lights have gone out, and like I said, they're not going to come on for at least 3 months. Light sticks, flashlights, lanterns, and don't forget to have lots of batteries. Anything that plugs in is not plug-inable anymore, so make sure you have lots of different tools. I don't know what you're going to do with all these tools, but you've got a lot of time on your hands all of a sudden because you're not going to work and there's a lot of work to do. So never throw a tool away. And one of the tools you need to make sure you have is a gas shutoff. When do you shut off your gas? If you don't smell it, you're well trained. Page 12 and 23 of your Prepare Guide has lots of utility-specific information. Next, your credit cards and debit cards don't work and you stopped carrying cash in 1994. So, you're gonna carry some cash, maybe with a little bit more discretion than this. You need to have some 1s, some 5s, some 10s. have a little bit of cash on you at all times so that you can, when you realize, it's like, wow, we didn't buy toilet paper, and toilet paper costs $10 a roll now, you're able to go and get the things that you need. There are a lot of financial specific documents on page 8 that you're going to find in your guide. We encourage you to print and photocopy and laminate things like birth certificates, death certificates, mortgage documents, insurance documents. Make sure that those things, that paperwork that you rely on, is safe somewhere in your kit. Next, your car. You're not driving your car anymore. But here's what you've got. You do have a bike, and bikes work, and bikes are going to be very, very handy after Cascadia. By the way, if you're a bike commuter or if you ride TriMet, here's some things that you should always keep in your satchel or your purse. Food, first aid, water filtration, poncho, emergency blanket, medication, and a little bit of water. If you're a super crazy biker like my wife is, maybe you even have a cargo bike, which is going to allow you to take things from place X to place Z. Right now, the only thing that we really use our cargo bike for is putting the boys to sleep. Long day, long day. Last thing, yeah, guess what? Your toilets don't flush anymore. In Christchurch, New Zealand, they didn't flush for 1 year. 1 year of no flushing toilets in southern Christchurch, New Zealand. And this is, you can do better than this, people. Newberg, you can do better. So here's what you're going to do to get ready for that eventuality. You're going to start building earthquake toilets. Here, if you're my son, it involves, your weekend involves kind of trolling the back alleys of Japanese restaurants, gathering 5-gallon soy sauce containers, and making earthquake toilets. Here's the gist of an earthquake toilet. You need at least 2. One is for number 1, and the other is for number 2. Are you reading me? You got to keep your number 1 and your number 2 separate. Keeping those separate is going to diminish the smell and also diminish the risk of contamination and disease being spread. Anytime you make a number 2 in the 2 bucket, you're just going to throw some leaves, some peat moss, or some paper on top of it, and it's going to aid the composting process and diminish the smell. And then after that, with this lovely little image, you just kind of put a border right around it, and yeah, your Christmas card ready. It's going to get mixed reviews, let me warn you. And after you've done all those things, you're going to take your prepare guide and you're going to put it in your kit as well, because it has a lot of information for immediately after a big event that's going to help you. And where are you going to put that kit? There's not a one-size-fits-all, okay? But I'll give you an idea. Don't put it upstairs in your home. Don't put it in your basement, because both could be difficult to access. Always choose the main floor of your home if it's going to be inside. If outside, this is our shed. We put all of our stuff for a family of 5 in our shed. Water for a family of 5, and the 45-gallon Rubbermaid Tough Neck on wheels ready to go. Now here's the even tougher part. You got all the stuff. Now you need to sit down and have a conversation on how to make a plan with your family. And here's the gist of a plan. You need to be able to answer with your partner, with your family, this question. Sweetheart, what are we going to do if the 3 kids, you and me, find ourselves in 5 different places after this earthquake and we can't call each other? That's the question you're trying to answer. There's no one size fits all, but here's the gist of putting together a family plan. For one, my wife knows that she's going to wait a certain period of time before she tries to go to get any of the kids. She's going to wait for me to get home, and we're going to go together to get the kids because we feel that that is safer. That's the gist of our plan A. But if she doesn't see me at hour X, she knows that I'm going to get Cyrus, and she's going to go get Jack and Zoe, and we're going to return home. That's a plan. But we also know that if we don't find each other at home, we're going to find each other at the local park, Unthank Park. That's plan B. We also know that Unthank Park could liquefy, and we know what liquefaction is now. So we've got a plan C. The important thing about a plan is you know where you're going to go, when you're going to go, what the timing is, and under what circumstances. You talk about it, and you repeatedly talk about it every 6 months. That's a plan. You also have a plan for being caught on the wrong side of the river. Do you know what I mean by that? Yeah. If you crossed a river tonight from home, you're on the wrong side. And we all spend time on the wrong side of the river, which means that if you're on the wrong side like I am right now, I'm not crossing the river today. I'm not crossing tomorrow. I don't think I'm crossing 3 days from now. I don't know when I'm crossing the river again, which means I need to have a friend on the other side who I know is prepared, who can shelter me, and in exchange, I'm going to be his wrong side of the river buddy. And if he finds himself on our side of the river, he knows he can come to us. This is a tough conversation. It's one that we avoid, which is why in your handouts, you're going to find the Cascadia Conversation Kit. Everything that we talked about tonight, from the water to the plan to the emergency communication, all of it is step-by-step in the Cascadia Conversation Kit so that you can start having a conversation. And the last thing, 2 more minutes. We need to get right back to the beginning. Because I told you before, this is not just about nuts and bolts preparedness. It's about preparedness culture. So I'm going to show you our cultural blind spot. You ready? How many of you think that everyone should prepare for the Cascadia subduction zone? Give me hands. Good. How many of you expect people to prepare for this earthquake? How many of you feel that how many of you actually, when you go and you see your boss's house, when you go to your sister's apartment, when you get into a car, do you expect to find that they are prepared? Most of us, we don't really. And that is a gap of common sense. And let me tell you this, if we don't expect each other to prepare, we won't. On the other side, if we expect something, people are likely to comply. I'm going to show you something. Seattle, 2014. Remember when they won the Super Bowl? Yeah, I didn't watch. I don't like football. But I'll tell you what I did like. I liked this really interesting video of a celebration after the Super Bowl because it taught me something really interesting about expectations. Now, you expect the celebration, the hugging. You know what I didn't expect? I never expected that on a day like today, people would be so patient to wait for the crosswalk signal. I'll tell you what, seeing that helped me understand something that I want you to understand. Those people were not fearing a jaywalking ticket. Do you know why they all stood in place? Because they could feel the expectations of each other. I don't want to look like a jerk. This is what's expected of me. Yes, it's the Super Bowl. Yes, I want to go over there and hug that person, but I'm going to wait because I don't want to look like a jerk. This is what's expected. And that's part of the reason this scene is part of the reason we do earthquake drills. It's not just about training your amygdala, it is about setting the expectation of the right behavior. And part of the reason for setting that expectation is that if we don't, very, 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 very quickly, the other expectation can take hold and cause people to get hurt. And even if we know what to do, like Kelly, if the expectation of the moment is to hold up a wine rack, you'll be surprised at what people might do. So it's not just about what we do in the moment, it's also about how we talk about it when we go home. So the next time you bring up this earthquake and someone tries to end the conversation with this, I want you to be a little bit more confrontational than you usually are. Because to say that this is for other people and to let that be the end of the conversation, here's what happens when we let this be the way we end this conversation. We stop conversations on how to get ready. We don't talk about making family plans, and then we don't talk about how we're going to get our kids ready for this.
Earthquake! Drop! 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 Cover! Hold
So I'm going to tell you the same thing I've told 10,000 other people. Go be the crazy uncle in your family. Go be the crazy aunt. Because once there are enough people who are crazy, you know what happens? It becomes normal. And once it becomes normal, it becomes expected. And once it becomes expected, it becomes cultural. Most of the people that need to hear this aren't in the room today. And you have access to people who will never come to this presentation. So the best way to make your voice heard is through example. So here's how we end the presentation. As always, Stevie's gonna come up, and you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna take a picture. You know of who? You. And here's what we do with that picture. We're gonna shove you off into preparing out loud. We're gonna put that picture on Facebook. And we ask that you go tag yourself. And you are going to share what you're doing to get ready at the hashtag PrepareOutLoud website. So whether you build a kit, build your water supply, go camping with your kit, secure your water heater, or if you find your 4-year-old giving an impromptu demonstration at the library, those are things that need to be shared. So, and not everyone has Facebook, and not everybody wants to be on Facebook, so I've read. If you don't want to be in this picture, take that prepare guide, put it over your face. If you're okay with being in it, put it on your chest. May I ask that we've come to the center as much as possible, given the limited viewing of here? Can we, if you're okay, moving as much to the center as possible, we'd very much appreciate it. And I am going to start bringing, let's see, could I have Brian Young and Joe Hannon? Okay. Y'all have been a fantastic audience. Thank you for humoring us. Yay, all right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Stevie's got to take lots of pictures. Just keep smiling. Just keep smiling. Oh, I'm being a good sport. Roll your eyes. It's okay. Your eyes are going to be small in this picture. Keep taking them. And we've got a couple of raffle prizes. Thank you. We got a couple of raffle prizes. We got a couple of raffle prizes to give away. So I'm going to bring our city manager, Joe Hannon, to the... Here we go. You want to be in the picture. And here we go. And Brian, are we here too? Joe, pull one out.
What if I pick my own?
Then
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
There's a word for that.
Yeah. And it's Cindra Gray.
Cindra, all right, come on up.
Heidi Moreland.
Heidi Moreland? Hey, Heidi. And we got one more.
Joe?
John Tabor.
John Tabor? Yep, John?
Going once?
Going once, going twice? Oh, the natives are restless. Go quick.
Hillary Crew.
All right, thank you so much. Y'all, that we've got some closing remarks here. I thank you for your attention, and there is a survey in your prepare guide. We appreciate you filling it out if you got the time. Thank you.
So the only closing is thank Newberg Christian and the Red Cross. What an amazing presentation. So yeah. So thank. Okay. Oh, good. So right up there, there's other stuff on the city's website, and please, if you don't go to Newberg Christian, to wherever you go, church or not, go to those folks. If you got a small group, a reading club, and just spread the word that's here. We're going to try just as a community to go to our neighbors and to prepare ourselves so that we are ready for that 2-week period.
Hi, thank you for coming. I'm Brian Young. I'm the emergency manager for Yamhill County. I think we need to recognize my contact in putting this together, and that's Christy Cook. What an outstanding job. The turnout has been great. Thank you for Newberg Christian Church for sponsoring this, and that was a great presentation. Loved it. I've seen many presentations on this, but that one awesome. Very awesome. So I was told to just give a brief kind of synopsis of what we do. So the next 45 minutes will be dedicated towards emergency management in Yamhill County. No, I'm just kidding. So you know, you've all heard I'm from the government. I'm here to help, right? I am from the government. And emergency management at the county level is kind of based on planning and public outreach. So internally, we plan for things: hazard mitigation planning, debris management planning, fatality management planning, emergency operations planning, plan, continuity of government planning. So it's what we do. Another thing that we do, and I'll go back to what Steve said about making a plan for your family, is you have to exercise that plan, okay? If you don't exercise that plan, it's harder to put it in action. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. Get your kit together and turn the power off for a weekend, a day or two, and live off your kit, right? Test your plan, your family reunification plan. And here's the deal with planning. We've got an exercise coming up that deals with our fatality management, our mass fatality plan. And what's interesting is my exercise guy, I really have to watch what he designs, because months ago we started to work on getting our mass fatality plan in order, and he did a bus crash with multiple fatalities. And I mean, this is months ago, right? And tractor trailer, bus, all that good stuff. What happened just the other day in Canada, 19 miles north of Podunk? A small place out in the middle of nowhere. If it can happen anywhere. We in emergency management try and prepare for the worst case scenario. It's not paranoia. We want you guys to be able to be self-sufficient, to try and thrive during a disaster, okay? Because let's say there's 75 people here or whatever. I'm not good at estimating numbers, but if I don't have to worry about you guys when I'm running an EOC, Emergency Operations Center, post-disaster, yes, it's a small victory in the war, right? So I applaud you guys coming out here tonight. And just as Steve mentioned, you have to spread the word. Get this out there. Be that crazy uncle, but bring it across as it's not paranoia, because we live in a pretty volatile area if you think about what the potential we have under our feet. Okay, so again, thank you for coming. If you have any questions, you can contact me at any time through our emergency management website. It's real easy to find. Give me a shout or email me. Love to talk to you. Thank you.